All right. Hello, everyone. So it seems you guys really liked our last discussion we did. So we decided we're going to go for it again. This time we're talking about Sophia Coppola's new film, On the Rocks. It's starring Rashida Jones and Phil Murray, and it's really good. So in case you don't remember, I'm Zoe Leininger. I'm one of the assistant editors with Cinemablography and one of the writers also on the team.
I'm Landon Kennedy. I'm another intern at Cinemablography and also an editor and writer.
I'm Samantha Shima. I go by Sammy. I'm a writer at Cinemablography.
I'm Adrian Flores. I'm an upcoming writer at Cinemablography.
All right, so On the Rocks is Sophia Coppola's new movie. It's about a middle-aged woman who begins to suspect that her husband might be cheating on her, and her eccentric playboy father, played by Bill Murray, comes up with kind of a scheme to follow him and figure out the truth behind his seemingly strange behaviors. I guess I'll start with my initial thoughts, which are that I'm kind of a fan of Sophia Coppola's movies. I really like Lost in Translation a lot. The Virgin Suicides is also very good. I've seen a few other ones by her, and I've generally enjoyed them. This one, I think, it wasn't my favorite from her, but it definitely gave me the same feeling as the other ones that I've seen, especially kind of the Lost in Translation with the older guy, both played by Bill Murray in both of these movies, and then the younger girl kind of exploring their relationship. In this one, their father and daughter, and then in Lost in Translation, it's more of a romantic relationship. But they both kind of involve being in a city and kind of going on these strange misadventures, and it's just a really I don't know how to say it. It just gives you this emotion, this feeling that I don't know how many other directors I get this kind of strange feeling from.
I feel like the film has a lot of patience, just like the way that, like, thinking about the story, there's not like a real resolution. And then also thinking about the way that the shots are structured, we linger on characters and we linger on moments for longer periods of time just to let both the characters and the audience sit there. So I think that weird feeling might be patience, because I feel like I haven't seen that in other movies before. This is my first movie that I've seen by Sophia Coppola. So that's just the one thing that I noticed was like the lingering and kind of like a slower pace.
Yeah, it's definitely like the writing is beautiful. I loved it so much, and the acting was amazing, and it just really made it all come together. And like that slow pace that you talked about, it really like lends itself to the screenplay because it's like the perfect way to shoot a mom who's kind of like feeling like she's stuck, feeling like she's not getting anywhere. So it, like the whole thing is slow, and like she's kind of being kind of dragged along in different things by like her friend who talks a lot and she's like not really listening to her, and by her dad who's like, oh yeah, this is an adventure, we're gonna find out what's going on, even though she's like, I don't want to do this, I'm just gonna talk to him. And her dad's like, no, we've got to go like hack his phone, we've got to like have someone follow him. And so she's kind of just being like taken along for a ride, and it's not, she doesn't really have much agency in her life. And I feel like the cinematography really brings that out.
Yeah, I feel like Laura's character is very funny because the way that the story is structured, she has like a non-job, which is she's a writer, but she doesn't really spend a lot of time at her place of work. So for all these events to happen, she's kind of has to be like she kind of has to have like nothing going on in her life in order for these other more interesting characters to push her along, especially with the dad. It's like the dad's
Yeah,
very eclectic.
I was just gonna say Bill Murray really, I think, was kind of the highlight of this movie. He's very funny, as Bill Murray usually is, but he's also very like you're laughing at him or with him, but then you're also like frustrated with like how he behaves as like a parent. Like he's constantly hitting on younger women that are like the age of his daughter that he's hanging out with, and he's just like, yeah, leave your kids, we'll fly to Mexico or whatever. It's just like you love him, but you are just so frustrated by him at the same time. And he's really interesting in that way to watch. And like he does have a few moments where you do see kind of deeper into his emotions and like the reason for why he behaves this way or why he's done certain things in his past that he's done. And so they kind of give him more depth, but a lot of the time he's just like cracking jokes, being funny. The scene where they get pulled over and he's able to like use his charisma to talk his way out of getting a ticket or anything, like because he knows the guy's dad. He uses his words and like I feel like he hides his emotions kind of behind this mask of kind of the witty playboy that he wears all the time. So he was definitely one of the most interesting parts of the movie for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And like the way he played the character, you could tell how like he's saying all these disgusting things about women the whole way through. And yet he's like women are drawn to him in this kind of like magnetic way. And the way he plays it, like it makes sense. Sometimes you see a really disgusting character who's like a ladies' man, like is horrible to women, and you just don't understand why women are attracted to him. But like in this one, like he's able to play that dynamic really well, like the dual personality kind of thing, where like he's like knows how to compliment them in a way that like will get them to like him. At the same time, he has like no respect for them at all, and he's making up these crazy stories to like explain why he is the way he is, and like it's all like evolution and like it's just his nature, and like men can't help that they have affairs, and like they just have to like impregnate as many women as they can, so like they can't be monogamous. And so like he's just making up these crazy stories, and somehow he still manages to be a likable character, and that was just really incredible to me how he was able to pull that off.
Yeah, because the side of of Felix's character, the dad's character,
Mhm.
is it's never comes off as abusive. Like we never get that he abused his kids, or that he abused his wife, or anything like that. It's more, I don't want to say playful, but it's kind of like that, where he doesn't do anything physically to hurt people, but he's very good at emotionally manipulating people through his character and through his
Um,
personality.
I've noticed kind of consistently with Bill Murray is a lot of it, like you guys have mentioned, they're very silly. A lot of his characters are really exaggerated, and I wouldn't say they're malicious. I think the term would be more so remorseless.
Mm.
Is would be a lot more accurate to describe how silly that he acts when somebody gets mad at him over something.
Yeah, he's definitely like unrelenting in his constant like remarks and comments, and um, he just he doesn't seem to ever want to stop. Like he's always going. Like the scene with the car, and like they pull him over. He's like, I can't stop. He's like, if I stop, the car won't start. And that's kind of how his character is. Like he has to always be going, always talking, always be like in control of the situation and the people around him. And if he stops, that's when we kind of see those cracks in him, and his emotional side starts to come out. Is when he has to stop and like has to take a breath. So it was a very very good performance, I thought.
Yeah. And I think Laura, like, it explains so much about like who Laura is as a character, and like when she's like she's writing from home, so she's the one looking after the kids because her husband has a job where he has to like actually leave the house for work. And so she's the one kind of in charge of everything, and she's kind of like stuck there. She doesn't have a lot of places to go, and she's kind of stuck with her dad in the same way because she knows all these things about him, and she's very vocal about disagreeing with his choices and what he's been doing, but it's not until the end that she actually like really calls him out on it. And then the scene where like they switched watches, or her husband gave her the watch, and the fact that that was something that her father was trying to use to say, look, he's cheating on you, I saw him buy this thing, but then he didn't give it to you, he must be giving it to someone else. And like that was kind of turned around, and she took off the father's watch and put on the one her husband gave her. It was kind of like a switching roles, like she's decided she's not doing what her father wants anymore. So and that's when she's not stuck anymore, she's able to write and she's able to do things and like become more of her own person, I think. And that was really cool.
Yeah, the watch thing, I don't know, because that's like the last thing that happens in the movie, and it's a very strong symbolic gesture of how Laura's character has changed throughout the film. I just, I feel like it's forced in a weird way. Like, I understand why it happens and why I'm looking at it, but at the same point, I don't know if Dean would buy her a watch. I don't know, especially with that being the last moment, and for me to think about this gesture, it's like I didn't like that's how the film ended, to be honest.
Yeah, I thought the ending was kind of abrupt. Like I was expecting kind of another shot after that, and then it was just like the credits, and I was like, oh, and it was kind of not startling, but it was like, oh, okay, it's over now. And it was just like I was expecting something else to be like the final image, even if it wasn't as kind of impactful as the switching of the watches. I was expecting kind of that closing kind of shot or even sequence of them like leaving, and then it would end. Instead, it's like an action and then it's cut off and the whole movie's done on like a pretty significant action, rather than having kind of a little buffer shot or something in there. So yeah, I think it was a bit of an abrupt ending. And only seeing it once, I can't say whether I love it or hate it or anything like that. It just did catch me a little off guard.
I feel like with the ending so abruptly, I felt like we didn't really get a lot of closure with Laura and Dean's relationship. That's husbands. I'm just thinking, sorry. But I felt like there wasn't any resolution with their relationship, because we followed Dean for so long that we don't really learn anything about him. For most of the film, it's about the relationship between Laura and Felix. And I feel like Dean is such an important thing, like it's such a character that everyone thinks about, but there's nothing that really happens to him, and we don't really see the relationship between Laura and Dean. Like towards the middle there, I was like, how did they even get married? Like, I understand that relationships change over time, but at the same point, they didn't feel like they would be two people that would decide to get married. I just needed some more character exploration with Dean.
I kind of wanted more things to be explained. Like the initial thing that made her start to suspect never really got cleared up. And like, I mean, it could be like her friends were telling her, like, oh, he was just kind of out of it. Like he didn't mean, like it didn't mean he thought she was somebody else. Like it was just whatever, he was tired. But then like it never really was. And then I don't know, it just, there were like all the little hints along the way didn't really get cleared up. Some of them kind of got like glossed over by Dean when she was like the travel case, and he kind of like just was like, oh yeah, it was nothing, I'll just give it back to her, thanks. And like he totally didn't even like try to reassure her or anything. And so like I wish there would have been some more like of them like kind of maybe clearing that stuff up, rather than just like him laughing at her for being suspicious kind of thing, because I feel like there was a lot of that at the end with him, like, oh, that's so funny that you thought I was cheating, sort of.
Yeah. Oh, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say they might have done that on purpose to put a lot more emphasis on the strain of the relationship between two main characters, like how Laura just kind of has problems with her dad on and off throughout the film because of the issues that their family had. It's almost like the film is a metaphor for not getting over some sort of like childhood issue. Like she carries a lot of that resentment from her dad over to her husband when it looks like he's doing something similar that the dad would have done.
Mm-hmm.
I feel
Yeah,
like that's where a lot of Laura's insecurities come from, because Felix like kind of reassures her on those insecurities. Like, look at what he got you for your birthday, and the way that he talks to you. It reinforces the insecurities that she has with Dean, but also what she had with her father. Because, like, one of the lines that Felix says when Laura asks, "Why did you do it? Like, why did you cheat on mom?" And Felix says, because she started paying attention to you kids. The attention was taken away from me and was put on to her kids. And it was essentially a twisted way of saying it was Laura's fault that it happened. And that's something that's not really addressed by either of them, but it is kind of a thing that points to Laura's insecurities in her current relationship, starting with what she witnessed between her dad, Felix, and her mom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was gonna say about like the resolution of kind of their relationship or her thoughts about him possibly cheating. I think a lot of that for me was satisfied by the restaurant scenes where in the middle when she's kind of suspecting him of cheating, they go to the restaurant and it's like a terrible experience and she thinks the cake is for her and it's for the couple next to them, and then they have a little argument about the cake, and then at the end after they've kind of talked through their problems they have another scene at a restaurant and they do bring out like a cake for her, and it's like a much better version of that initial kind of conflict or that dinner that they have in the middle of the film. It's like to me that was kind of paralleling the state of their relationship at the middle and at the end through that. So that for me I think helped with the resolution, but I also think they didn't want to like just have a bunch of dialogue to explain every little thing, and that might have gotten a little wordy and kind of maybe not the best way to go about answering all of the questions that she has, is for him to just like blurt them all out, all the answers. So I also thought that like some of the stuff seemed like it was just glossed over and then moved on. But at the same time, I do think they addressed it through that kind of scenario that we see play out at the end.
I feel like I would have been more comfortable with the way the film ended if the conversation between Dean and Laura was was more in depth, because like after they both realize, like they come together and realize what's going on and they want to actually talk it out, like they step outside, it feels like it's going to be this big thing, but then it's a very superficial conversation. I feel like they reveal the details to each other, but no one really reacts to it. I mean, I feel Dean would have a more severe reaction to it. And then I also think that he should have justified his actions better, like why it was very suspicious the way that he acted. But also, Laura could have said, this is why I felt like you were going against me. And this is why I got caught up with my dad trying to track you down and doing all of this. I just felt like that could have been a good conflict and a good resolution to then lead to the final restaurant scene. It just, the conversation that's there now does not work for me. in fulfilling those relationships and filling those goals that they need to talk about before they move forward in their marriage.
That's actually a theme you can pick up in a couple of Sophia Coppola's movies. Like there was one called Lost in Translation, where Bill Murray was speaking to the other main character, and close to the end, he kind of leans in, whispers into the other character's ear, and you never get to hear the actual contents of the conversation. I've noticed that with a couple of Coppola's movies, where it's basically there's a lot of stuff going on off screen, and you as the audience don't ever necessarily get the emotional resolution because it's depicting a very private moment between the characters instead.
Yeah, this film very much, I think, fit a lot of what she usually does in her movies, which is kind of addressing a lot of the times the relationship between men and women in all kinds of different relationships. Her movie Somewhere is about, it's very similar to this actually. It's about like a father who's a playboy and his younger daughter. And although this On the Rocks is that relationship, but the daughter's an adult and he's an old man, and Somewhere he's kind of an adult, but she's still a child. But that is definitely something that she likes to explore, is the relationships between men and women at different like points in life and in different kinds of relationships. And so a lot of the thematic and like the content of this movie was definitely reminiscent of her larger body of work and what she usually is aiming for.
Yeah, it did remind me a lot of Somewhere just because of that father-daughter relationship. And I think I kind of heard like a little bit like when I was like reading stuff about the film that like she might even be like reflecting on like her own like career kind of in the shadow of her father who like directed The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, and so like how she had to kind of get out from underneath of him and like do her own thing. And so I think it's really interesting just like the way she explores relationships. And like while I didn't love the way it ended, I really liked like how it got there to the end. Like I thought the whole thing was like really well paced. I just kind of wish there was a little bit more. Like it was a very short film and like it could have done with another half hour, but yeah.
It was very like beautifully shot as well, especially the Mexico scenes. I thought the colors were very nice, which is, I mean, the New York stuff was shot well as well, but like the colors didn't really come in until Mexico, and you get like her bright yellow clothes and the pink walls, and it was just very beautiful to look at, especially towards the end. So it was very it was shot well. I think technically it was very well done.
I feel the role of color in On the Rocks is very interesting because, like you said, in New York, it's very desaturated. Lots of like cool tones and very muted colors. And then when we get to Mexico, it's very lively. I feel that it's a representation of the way that Felix feels because in New York, it's it's like the beginning of him trying to reintroduce this relationship with his daughter, and then Mexico is the climax of that because he actually convinces her to go down there and do this, and then when it breaks off and they go back to New York, then it returns to that more desaturated color palette. So I don't know what you guys think of that, but I feel like that's very representative of Felix's feelings throughout the film and how he feels about his relationship with his daughter.
Yeah, and that brings to mind the scene where they're driving around in the car is when he feels the most alive, at least during the New York part of the movie, is when they're driving around in this bright red car and they're just zooming through the streets, and that's a very colorful and quite loud scene in an otherwise rather quiet movie. So that I think fits into that theme that you pointed out about the color and his emotions. That's when he feels the most excited to be with her and the most alive, doing what it is that he wants to be doing, which is following her husband around.
I feel like a different color change too is after this wild goose chase that Laura and Felix are on, and that final scene in the restaurant. It's a different kind of richness of color, like especially thinking about the red jewelry box that her new watch comes in. It's a very deep red as opposed to kind of like the brighter colors that are in that New York car chase scene. Just thinking about how the world is changing in Laura's eyes too, and how her new situation is still vibrant, but it's a little bit more natural. Like it's a natural vibrancy, I think,
Mm-hmm.
instead of like synthetic bright colors.
Yeah. This might be a little weird, but like I loved the way that like there were so many like shots in cars like driving through New York, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of Taxi Driver, which like I mean it's not at all like Taxi Driver, but just like the way it kind of like showcases New York and like the people that she meets and stuff, just like driving through the city with all the lights and things. It just kind of brought that to mind. But like the city is like a almost a character in the film itself, and the way she films it is like central to Laura's character too. So that was really nice.
Yeah, that's another thing that reminded me a lot of Lost in Translation is the setting became a part, like a direct influence on the events. Like New York is where she feels comfortable, but Felix feels kind of out of place. And I mean, it seems like he feels at home anywhere just because of his charisma and the swagger that he walks around with. But then Mexico is where she feels really uncomfortable and he feels even more at home. And then in like Lost in Translation, the point is that neither of the characters feel at home in this foreign city. So I think that's another thing that that Sophia Coppola does well is kind of making the setting a vital part of the story and of what she's saying through it, not just kind of a place for things to happen. It is thematically very relevant to what it is that she's doing.
Yeah. Well, we're almost out of time. We've got like 5 minutes. If anyone had any closing thoughts about the film, now would be the time to say. But I think we've covered a lot.
Yeah, I just wanted to finish saying like I have a little bit different perspective than Landon because I've never seen any other Sofia Coppola films. So just thinking about how On the Rocks compares to other films that I've seen, I think it's very different and in style and like what we talked about at the beginning with the patience of it and letting characters kind of open up on screen. That's something that I do appreciate. I'm not sure if it's my favorite style of filmmaking just because the slower paced film isn't typically my style, but I still enjoyed it regardless. And I think I would like to look into other things that Sofia Coppola has made.
Yeah, I guess for my final thoughts, um, the movie was described as a comedy in the places that I had seen it, and there definitely were parts that were humorous, especially with the Bill Murray character. But a lot of it was very serious and very quiet and sometimes kind of somber, and it was definitely not like a comedy in like the traditional sense of the word. It was funny because of the way the characters behaved, but a lot of the time, like you're just kind of sad and quiet with them. So it was not. I wouldn't call it a comedy if I was trying to sell this to anyone. So that was kind of one thing that I was thinking the whole time I was watching it. It's like this is not very funny, but I don't think it's supposed to be funny. So those are just my final thoughts, I guess.
Yeah. I also that came up. I'm like, oh, this is a comedy, but like I can kind of see how it is, but also it's not really. Um But yeah, I mean, my general impression of the movie was I really liked it. I thought the actors were really great, and like most of them I'd seen in other things before, and so I kind of like knew how they worked and things. It was nice to, I don't know, see them really bring the script to life. And I think like the screenplay, because it was written by Sophia Coppola as well, so it really like embodied what she makes films about, and I thought it was a really nice film from her.
All right. Well, if that is it, then we can end this second roundtable that we've done. Hopefully, we'll get more maybe in the spring semester. But yeah, thank you for listening. Hopefully, you've seen the movie and enjoyed it or didn't enjoy it, but hopefully, you'll enjoy this discussion that we've had. So we will see you next time. Thank you for watching.
Yeah, and if you have any comments and any questions like that, leave it down in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much.